Speaking of people whose brain are melting and who are part of America's gerontocracy, I want to talk about Dianne Feinstein. Dianne Feinstein is now 89 years old. She is currently in her 6th term representing the state of California in the United States Senate. She, by all accounts, no longer has a functioning brain. She doesn't know where she is. She doesn't know her name. She has no idea what she's voting on. Everything is done by her staff. She was just absent for 3 months, which meant the Democrats were unable to pass or get approved any of Joe Biden's judicial nominees, angering the Democrats. And a lot of Democrats want her to resign because she's incapable of carrying out the work, because her brain doesn't function anymore. It's sad, but it's true. And she shouldn't be a United States Senator. And a reporter confronted her about where she was when she was gone, and she denied being gone. Not because she was lying, but because she didn't remember having been away, even though she was gone for 3 months, about 2 days until this exchange. Here you see The Hill. There's the article, Feinstein, quote, "I haven't been gone. I've been working." Quote, "A Feinstein spokesperson declined to immediately comment on the reports. Feinstein was hospitalized and stayed away from the Capitol for weeks because of complications from shingles. Her absence led 4 House Democrats, including Congressman Ro Khanna, to call for her resignation as Democrats struggled to move judicial nominations through the Senate. Critics have argued that she can no longer serve America's most populous state effectively, given her health. Feinstein and her office have pushed back at some suggestions, and the pressure to resign has not come from Democratic colleagues in the Senate, key allies in the House, the White House, or Congress, or California Governor Gavin Newsom. The exchange with the reporters, however, is likely to raise more scrutiny about Feinstein's activity and her ability to effectively serve her state." Now, we have the video of this exchange where Feinstein is being wheeled around in a wheelchair, and you can judge for yourself.
What has the response from your colleagues been like? What have the well wishes? What have you heard?
What have I heard about what?
About your return. How have they felt about your
No,
return?
I haven't been gone.
Okay.
You should follow them. I haven't been gone. I've been working.
You've been working from home, is what you're saying?
No, I've been here. I've been voting. Please, either know or don't know.
What do you say to Californians like Ro Khanna who say you should resign?
She was gone for 3 months. That was the day she came back. She was like waving like some kind of propped up character from that film, that Weekend with Bernie's. Do we have that art? One of the things, there you see it. That's pretty much what happened. I don't know if we can enlarge that, but it's showing kind of the reality of what's happening. Now, while a lot of Democratic voters are understandably angry that they can't get any judges approved because Dianne Feinstein, despite her not realizing it, is not actually in the Senate working. She's been absent for 3 months on the Judiciary Committee, meaning the Democrats have no majority, and are calling for her resignation. As that article suggests, the top level of the Democratic Party, the actual ruling elite, who, as we showed you in the past, doesn't care at all what their voters want, which is why they're saying, you're not going to have a primary no matter how many of you want to vote for a different candidate. Have fun. He's still going to be the nominee. Also are saying, we don't want Dianne Feinstein to resign. And the reason they'll say is because it's sexist to demand that, the same way they did when Democrats wanted Ruth Bader Ginsburg to resign under President Obama, in fear that there'd be a Republican president who would appoint her replacement, which is exactly what happened. And a lot of Democratic pundits came out and said that's misogynistic to demand that she resign. A woman has the right to her own body and can resign when she wants. But Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi have a much different motive. So here is an article that sheds light on what their motive is. And as it turns out, it is Nancy Pelosi's daughter who is currently taking care of Dianne Feinstein as her primary caregiver, at the same time that Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton have both explicitly and publicly said Feinstein should not resign despite her not knowing her own name. Here is the May 18th article from Politico, the title of which is Feinstein's Primary Caregiver, Pelosi's Daughter. A quiet caretaking arrangement has raised questions about whether Nancy Pelosi has the ailing senator's personal interests at heart. Quote, when Senator Dianne Feinstein walked into the Capitol last week, ending a months-long medical absence, one that she had forgotten, she was accompanied by Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, a small entourage of aides, and a close personal confidant with a storied political pedigree. Nancy Corinne Prouda blended into the swarm around the legendary California Democrat. What makes her legendary, by the way? Just the fact that she's like 90 and been around forever? The San Francisco Chronicle made note of her presence, but left unreported amid the spectacle the larger role that Prouda, the eldest child of former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, has come to play in Feinstein's life as the 89-year-old has dealt with the absence of her deceased husband, the departure of trusted staffers, a nasty case of shingles, and spiraling concerns about her fitness for office. By all accounts, the arrangement is rooted in a long and friendly relationship between Feinstein and the Pelosis, twin pillars of San Francisco politics. But among some of those who are aware, it has also raised uncomfortable questions about whether Nancy Pelosi's political interests are in conflict with Feinstein's personal interest. The intrigue surrounds the future of Feinstein's seat. Pelosi has endorsed Congressman Adam Schiff, her longtime protege and former handpicked House Intelligence Committee chair, to succeed Feinstein after her sixth and final term ends next year. Schiff is a household name in California and has already raised a $15 million campaign cash advantage over his nearest competitor. But if Feinstein were to bow to pressure and retire early, Schiff's advantage could disappear. Governor Gavin Newsom has pledged to appoint a black woman to serve out her term, and one of Schiff's declared opponents, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, would fit the bill. Quote, if Dianne Feinstein, that's her cute little nickname, Di-Fi, resigns right now, there's enormous probability that Barbara Lee gets appointed. Thus, it makes it harder for Schiff, one Pelosi family confidant told Playbook, adding that the relationship between Pelosi, her daughter, and the senator is, quote, being kept under wraps and very, very closely held. And here you see Pelosi endorses Adam Schiff in California Senate race if Feinstein doesn't run. She said he would be the one who needs to be filling that seat, not that black woman Barbara Lee. Now, ordinarily, if you think about it, a state like California that has no black representation, they have a white man as their governor. This is how Democratic Party politics works. Another man who is Latino, and a white woman, Dianne Feinstein, would at some point have to account for the fact that as such a large, important Democratic state, they have no black representation. That's why Barbara Lee is running, along with Congresswoman Katie Porter. And you have Hillary Clinton and Dianne Feinstein working very hard to prevent this long-term black Congresswoman from ascending to the Senate because they want this white man to do so instead, Adam Schiff. Ordinarily, that would be called racist without question. Fortunately for Democratic Party leaders like Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi, the rules clearly state that Democratic Party leaders are exempt from racism accusations, so lucky for them. But what makes it particularly amazing is that Barbara Lee actually has done something significant in the House, unlike Adam Schiff. On September 14th, 2001, as I've written about several times, so we're talking about 3 days after the 9/11 attack, when there was enormous pressure to acquiesce to everything the U.S. government wanted, she stood up on the House floor and was the lone vote, the only vote in the House or the Senate to vote against authorizing military force in Afghanistan. And for that, she was mauled, as you might imagine, as any dissident in the wake of 9/11 was. She was called a terrorist lover. She had tons of violent threats pouring into her office. She had to walk around with armed guards for a month. It was a very brave thing to do. And whether you were for the war in Afghanistan at the time or against, and lots of people believe it was morally justified because of the claim that the Taliban was harboring Osama bin Laden, even though the Taliban said they would turn over Osama bin Laden if the U.S. presented proof that he was actually responsible for the 9/11 attack. Not an unreasonable demand when a country is saying, we demand you turn over someone safely in your country, legally in your country, and you say, well, show us evidence that he's guilty, and we will. The Bush administration said, we're not showing you anything. You give him to us, or we're going to bomb you and go to war against you. And Barbara Lee stood up and said, not that the U.S. has no moral right to do it, but that if we did it, it would end up being a morass. We would end up with no war aims and with yet another war that we were trapped in for years without any end. Whatever you think of the wisdom of going to war, there is no question that Barbara Lee stood up and gave warnings that were very prescient, that proved absolutely true. Time has vindicated what she said. And she was the only one with courage to do it. Let me show you this video. It was a 2-minute speech that she gave, or even less, on the House floor. And again, this is September 14, 2001, when almost nobody was willing to oppose what the U.S. government was demanding. Listen to what she said.
The gentlewoman from California is recognized for a minute and a half.
Thank you, and I want to thank our ranking member and my friend for yielding. Mr. Speaker, members, I rise today really with a very heavy heart, one that is filled with sorrow for the families and the loved ones who were killed and injured this week. Only the most foolish and the most callous would not understand the grief that has really gripped our people and millions across the world. This unspeakable act on the United States has really forced me, however, to rely on my moral compass, my conscience, and my God for direction. September 11th changed the world. Our deepest fears now haunt us. Yet I am convinced that military action will not prevent further acts of international terrorism against the United States. This is a very complex and complicated matter. Now, this resolution will pass, although we all know that the president can wage a war even without it. However difficult this vote may be, some of us must urge the use of restraint. Our country is in a state of mourning. Some of us must say, let's step back for a moment. Let's just pause just for a minute and think through the implications of our actions today so that this does not spiral out of control. Now, I have agonized over this vote, but I came to grips with it today, and I came to grips with opposing this resolution during the very painful yet very beautiful memorial service. As a member of the clergy so eloquently said, as we act, let us not become the evil that we deplore. Thank you, and I yield the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman's time has expired.
Now, again, there's no denying the courage of what she did there. For those of you who didn't live through it, it was an incredibly repressive time. Everything that happened in the weeks after, the passage of the Patriot Act, the war in Afghanistan, the installation of a domestic, illegal, unconstitutional spying regime, and so much else ended up being incredibly damaging to the United States. We just showed you Fiona Hill's speech about how the war in Iraq and the war in Afghanistan devastated America's moral standing in the world. If anybody had known it would take 20 years to occupy that country, to lose thousands of American lives, and then to walk out with the disaster that we left in, only for the Taliban to waltz right back in, do you think anybody would have voted yes on that war? She was very prescient and very courageous in her warning. This is who they're trying to keep out of the Senate in favor of Adam Schiff, who has done nothing but blatantly lie to the American people, who has pushed false claims after false claims. He swore on cameras over and over that he has personally seen smoking gun evidence of collusion between Trump and the Russians, only for, as the public now knows, that to be a complete lie. So the first thing the ruling class of the Democratic Party is trying to do is to keep a woman in power who is completely incapacitated, just like they're trying to do with Joe Biden, because they don't care at all about whether the government acts on your behalf. How much more obvious can that be? But the reason they want to keep her in power, other than the fact that their only loyalty is to their own class, the ruling class, is because they want to keep that woman out of power in order to place Adam Schiff in it. And you can just imagine what would be said in any other context about this being done. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update. Catch our full shows for free, live weekdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on Rumble, and join our locals community at greenwald.locals.com for all of my written journalism, exclusive after-show Q&As, and more.